Welcome to Where Her Heart Speaks, a show designed to challenge and disrupt ineffective thoughts and behaviors to help you not only embody peace, joy, calm, and certainty, but also to help you live the life you've always dreamed of living. Where Her Heart Speaks with Coach Catherine begins now.
Hi there, it's Coach Catherine. Do you or have you ever wondered the state of your nervous system? We've all heard about the fight or flight response, but what does it really mean? Listen, I've created a quick and easy assessment for you to determine the state of your nervous system. Is it keeping you safe? Is it keeping you stuck? Or is it allowing you to be your authentic self and thrive? If you'd like to know the answer to those questions and more, as well as how to experience more peace and calm in your life, I want to invite you to go to my website at www.catherinejames.com, where you will find the assessment on the front page. Everyone struggles with behaviors that once served them well, and they may or may not know if it serves them or no longer serves them today. But what they do know is that they can't break away from the behavior. I've come to learn that many of these behaviors are trauma responses. Now, you may call them coping mechanisms. I say they're coping mechanisms that were unconsciously developed to keep us safe from real or perceived threats. This week, I'll be talking about one in particular, but as I talk about it, and it just happens to be my own, I want to invite you to identify and insert yours in the blank. Consider things from a you perspective, like how does it resonate with you? And does it make sense for you and for your life? Hi there, and welcome. Welcome back to Where Her Heart Speaks. I'm Coach Catherine, international speaker, best-selling author, certified trauma-informed coach, and your host. I am super excited, and before I get started, I want to just take a moment to thank all of you listeners. Listen, I received the analytics for the first month, and I was so happy to see that there were nearly 1,000 listeners. Yes, for the first month. When I started this show, I didn't set any goals as far as reach was concerned. I simply wanted to have conscious conversations about the things that women face. So again, I want to say thank you, and I will ask that if you know any woman who is ready to move toward their dreams or her dreams, or maybe even have forgotten what it feels like to dream, send them the link and invite them to listen in alongside you. One of the best ways to learn is to learn with someone else. And also, if you've not already subscribed to the show, go ahead and do so. Do that right now so that you don't miss any of the upcoming shows. And let me tell you, we've got some juicy shows coming up in the very near future. If you're ready to get your whole life, you must keep tuning in to Where Her Heart Speaks. So, this week, I am diving into trauma responses, and in particular, perfectionism. I've chose this one because not only was this my trauma response, but also because so many of my clients who are high-achieving women also deal with perfectionism. And if you listen to the last two shows, you may have noticed something. You may have noticed that they were quite similar or almost exactly the same. And that's because I messed up, y'all. I made a mistake. And what I did, I actually uploaded the wrong interview. Oh my gosh, like back in the day, this would have sent me spinning. My negative mind chatter would have had a field day with me, asking me questions like, how could you have done something so stupid? Saying things like, people are going to think you're dumb, and on and on and on and on. Yeah. Again, I hear so many women say they are perfectionists. And as I said at the beginning, this may or may not be yours, your trauma response. Your response may be shrinking. Your response may be lying, not feeling worthy, maybe working long hours. But listen, whatever your response is, try to identify it and sit with it as I talk about what may have caused these responses. And if perfectionism is your thing, in the words of Bishop T.D. Jakes, get ready, get ready, get ready. Get your pen, get your notepad, and get in a quiet, uninterrupted space, both externally and internally. What is a perfectionist? Let's just dive right in. What is it? You can probably find many eloquent definitions out there, but I'm going to just cut through the chase and say, in short, a perfectionist is someone who does everything in her power to be perfect. Someone who does everything in her power to do nothing wrong. I know for myself, it took me a long time to really own that I was a perfectionist. I mean, I did it from, let's say, maybe an asset standpoint, when it made me look good, when it caused me to receive some type of accolades. I did it from an asset standpoint. And I remember, just as I'm talking, during the early days of my career, I had a picture of Garfield the cat in my cubicle. And the words on that picture said, not perfect, but darn close, explicit. Not perfect, but darn close, right? And that was the epitome of how I tried to live my life back then. And I had no idea that it was unrealistic. I had no idea that it was unhealthy. And back then, no one was talking about perfectionism or the consequences of it, at least not to my knowledge. And truthfully, had anyone asked me if I were a perfectionist, I probably would have denied it because I didn't know. I did not know that I was a perfectionist. All I knew was that I was trying to do the best that I could do to get ahead in life. All I knew is that I had to perform, behave in a manner that was going to ensure I would not be looked at in a certain way or thought of in a certain way. And let me tell you, awareness is the first step toward healing or change. And until I became aware, I couldn't make any change. I had to learn that I was a perfectionist. So how does one know? How do you know that you're a perfectionist? Our friends over at Very Well Mind noted 10 signs of a perfectionist or 10 signs of perfectionist traits. And I'm just going to go through them so that you can begin to identify. Perhaps you will know after this that maybe, or at least think, maybe I'm struggling a bit, or I carry some of these traits that meet that of a perfectionist, right? So some of the traits that our friends over at Very Well Mind gave is to have this all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking. Being highly critical of yourself. And not only being highly critical of yourself, but also being highly critical of others. Think about that. And then feeling pushed by fear. Feeling pushed by fear. I like to invite people to consider the energy underneath their behavior. Oftentimes when I'm talking to people and they're trying to figure out why they're behaving the way they're behaving, I will ask them, like, what's the energy that's driving it? We're either running toward a thing or we are running away from a thing. So in this case, we're running away from something that you're afraid of. And then another criteria they gave was having unrealistic standards. Oh my gosh. Focusing only on the results. This right here was so me. Listen, I used to say I am results oriented. I am a results oriented type of person. Or you would hear me say that I'm driven by the results. All that I look at are the results. At that time, did I know it was a perfectionist trait? Nope. Had no idea. No idea. Another criteria is feeling depressed. Feeling depressed by unmet goals. Having a fear of failure. Procrastination. That's one right there. Procrastination. Who knew procrastination actually comes from being a perfectionist? Like, who knew? But it makes all the sense, right? Because if you are focused on getting something right, if you're focused on perfecting, then you're likely not going to take action until you have everything you need or feel as though you have everything you need to deliver a perfect outcome or a perfect product. Procrastination comes from perfectionism. And then other criteria are defensiveness and low self-esteem. So 10 criteria that just gives us a little clue that we may be struggling with perfectionism. And I'd ask the question, can you relate? Can you relate to any of those? Do you see yourself in any of those? And if you answered yes, let me say this. If you can see yourself in one, some, or all of that list, and one, some, or all of that list resonated with you, know that there is nothing wrong with you. I'm going to say that again, because so many times we take it to mean that there's something wrong with us. There is nothing wrong with you. And in fact, I'd say everything is right with you. Everything is right with you because that likely means that your nervous system functioned the way it was designed to function. Yeah. It functioned just as it was supposed to. At one time or another, you faced a threat or a perceived threat, and your nervous system helped you out. Yeah, it did what it was supposed to do. So you may be thinking, I don't remember any threats, though. I don't remember even any perceived threats. and I'm like probably guessing, like I knew you were thinking that. So let's look at where this behavior may have come from. How did we, because I am not exempt. How did we become perfectionists? How did we develop these perfectionist tendencies or qualities? And for those of you who are not perfectionists, I just want to remind you that Even though this is not your thing, even though this is not your trauma response, just plug yours in, because likely what I'm going to share is applicable for you as well. So where did it come from? One of the first places that it may have potentially come from is in utero, while you were in your mother's womb. Many years ago, people were unaware that the mother's feelings could be transferred to her fetus. However, today, research tells us that babies, while still in the womb, can not only feel the mother's emotions, but they also feel them just as intensely as the mother does. Like, wow, that is mind-boggling. Like, they don't just feel those emotions, but with the same level of intensity. And it's so amazing because as I talk to people, I began to hear stories that confirm and validate things that I've read in the research. And so last week, while I was in Colorado training a group of state employees, we were going through a recap. This was our last training. And so we were recapping. And my focus is on the area of trauma and the effects of trauma and how it shows up in the workplace, how it shows up in our bodies. But we were going through this recap about everything we had covered over the past 6 months. And we came to a place of where we were talking about generational trauma and how trauma experienced by the mother during pregnancy can be transferred to the baby. And one of the guys kind of sat back in his chair and his eyes rolled up and he was like, wow, that's very interesting. And the look on his face made me curious. It was like, inquire, what's interesting about that? So what he did is he went on to share that he happens to be afraid of elevators. And he said that when he has to get on an elevator, he starts to sweat and he just has like this intense fear come over him. And he didn't know why. So he continued his story and he shared that he had recently told his mom about this fear. And his mother told him that she had been trapped in an elevator while she was pregnant with him. And so hearing about this generational trauma in that moment just took him back. And it validated what his mom had said. Like, she had been trapped in an elevator and experienced this fear and all of these emotions. And now he, as an adult male, experiences fear and all of these emotions when he has to ride an elevator, and he had no idea why. Mind-boggling, right? Now I'm going to shift, and I'm now going to talk about how, in utero, some other things just for us to consider. According to statistics, 30 to 50% of all pregnancies are unplanned and unintended. 30 to 50% of all pregnancies are unplanned and unintended. Now, what this tells me is that women carrying babies, those babies, likely experience some level of anxiety, some level of stress. And based on what we know, that the woman's or the mother's emotions are transferred to the baby, that means that this anxiety and this stress is transferred to the babies. Now, what scientists have not yet been able to determine is whether the fetus can sense if they are unwanted. And I would just say, me, myself, I tend to believe that they can. Listen, if dogs can feel rejection and sense when they're not wanted, why wouldn't a human life be able to do the same? A human life who is said to be more intelligent than any other being on earth, the human. So why wouldn't a human life be able to also determine when it's not wanted? And what we know is between 26 and 32 weeks, the fetus's brain, bodily functions, and the central nervous system is developed. So if the fetus can feel what the mother feels, I just believe that it can also feel when a mother doesn't want the child. And where am I going with this? Why is this important? Because 20 to 50% of all pregnancies are unintended. That's a big deal. And it doesn't mean that the mother may not come to love the child before it's born or after it's born, but it does mean that that child, while in the womb, may have experienced rejection. And that child, while in the womb, may have developed coping mechanisms or trauma responses. And I know for me, I think about my own life, and it's so funny. My mom listens to this and she says, God, sometimes it feels like I didn't do anything right. And I have to tell her, like, these are just my experiences. And I would say you've done a whole lot right, because I am the woman that I am today. I am where I am today, right? So there had to have been much done right. But these are my experiences, and I can use these experiences to help bring home a message, help people to better understand the points that are being made. So when I think about my own life, my parents were 16 when I was born. And as an adult, I know that I was an unplanned pregnancy. However, as a child, I didn't know that. And I don't ever remember hearing my mother say that she didn't want me, or her ever telling me that she didn't want me. But early in life, I knew, and I felt like in my fibers, in my being, that I was a mistake. Like I just knew this, and I didn't know why I knew it. I had never been told I was a mistake, not to my knowledge. But I knew that I was a mistake. And what I now know is there were a lot of adults around my mom who shamed her for her condition, which means she probably felt really bad and likely wished she didn't have to go through what she was going through. She probably wished she weren't pregnant. And I bet somewhere in her mind, she was consumed with the thoughts about this mistake she had made. And I often wonder how often those thoughts were made to mean that something was wrong with her. Not that she had failed the expectations of adults or those adults around her. Like, I want to make that real clear, because all it is that we failed the expectations of the adults around us. But I'm just guessing that all of what she was thinking and what she was going through made it to mean something was wrong with her, made it to mean that she had failed, not that she had failed the expectations of those adults around her. But again, that she herself was a failure. Like when we have to sit in that, when we have to take it on, that's hard. And I am pretty certain that I, as her baby, took on all of what she was experiencing and feeling. I can think back as far back to about age 4, feeling like I was a mistake. And my way for compensating, to prove to the world, I don't know how big my world was at that time. I needed to prove to whatever the world was for me in that moment, at that age of 4 and beyond, that I was not a mistake. And my thinking was that, like, if I was a mistake, I was going to be a darn good mistake. Now, the truth of the matter is all of this happened unconsciously. Like, there was nothing in me that said, hey, you feel like you're a mistake and you're going to prove to the world that you're not a mistake. No one ever knew I felt this way. Not even I, in terms of cognitively in my intellectual brain and or my thinking brain and being able to intellectualize what I was going through. I just felt I had to be the best. I had to be perfect. I had to win. I just felt that in my being. And I secretly competed with myself as well as everyone else. My cousins, the kids in my neighborhood, the kids in my classrooms. Like, I remember if I made a mistake, I literally felt like I was going to die. My throat would get tight. I would become angry, and I would begin to criticize myself like nobody's business. Like nobody's business. And I can remember doing this well into my 30s. And things like misplacing my keys or being late, not knowing the answer to a question, those things would send me overboard. Like internally. On the outside, maybe people didn't know what was going on. I came to a place where I was able to hide it very well. But internally, that feeling would come back. I would feel like I was going to die. The negative mind chatter would show up and it would start ripping me apart. Who can relate? Like, who can relate? Let me tell you, I am so glad this is no longer my story. Like today, I like to call myself a recovering perfectionist. And I wear that well. My goal, I aim to see most things as a learning opportunity. I laugh at myself and like I can more quickly shake things off and move on to the next. It just isn't that serious for me anymore. And can I tell you that I feel so much lighter? Yeah, I just need to take that in. Yeah, pause and appreciate that. Whew. If this is your story also, like you're a recovering perfectionist, put a smile on your face. Pat yourself on the back. Celebrate yourself for moving beyond that place. And as you celebrate yourself, what you're doing is you're rewiring your brain. You're telling your brain that you want more of that. Yeah. So being a perfectionist can be a result of taking on your mom's emotions and feelings while you were still in the womb. It can also be a result of your upbringing. A lot of times we don't like to think about that. We may not even want to cast blame. And this is not about casting blame. It's just sitting in our truth and understanding how our bodies have adapted as a result of. So if you were raised around adults who were highly critical, who were very rigid, maybe even perfectionists themselves, or you had adult responsibilities placed on you at an early age. Maybe you had to care for your siblings, or you had to be responsible for the house while your parents or your mom or dad, your caregivers were out working. Or if you were blamed for things like that a child would not have known. You may have adapted and took on perfectionist behaviors as a means to avoid painful consequences, as a means to avoid the criticism, avoid getting blamed, or avoid making mistakes. Like, this is what I talk about when I say I just love that the body knows how to protect us. Even when it doesn't seem like it was the best thing for us as an adult. It doesn't seem like it's the best thing for us as an adult. The body knows how to protect us. And as a child, when we had limited resources, the body kicked in and said, I'm going to take care of this child. I'm going to take care of this body. I'm going to take care of this being. I absolutely love the way God, the creator, whatever you may call him, made these bodies. Just the infinite knowledge. I love it. I used to work with a lady who was criticized as a child, and she struggled with perfectionism as an adult. She was very rigid. Like everything had to be planned. She considered every detail, every possible option. She had unreasonably high expectations for herself and unreasonably high expectations for others. You might guess that it was difficult for her to maintain like healthy relationships, because when people didn't live up to her expectations, she would just cut them off. Or she would be so critical that she would run them away. And the behavior was not one that she could control, like most of us. I'm going to say I couldn't control mine either. But what happened is it would show up in her job. And it was kind of like a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, she was really good at what she did. And she heard that a lot. She was really good at what she did. She received the praise for being really good at what she did. But then she was also often overlooked when it came down to getting a promotion. And I remember when I was a manager, my way of selecting individuals, I would always say, I would much rather have someone with fewer technical skills and a great attitude than having someone with a lot of technical skills and a poor attitude. Like, I was willing to bet on the person who had the great attitude and few skills. And I hired so many people like that. Why? Because what I knew is I could teach the technical component, but I cannot teach anyone to have a great attitude if they don't want one. So that was just a no-brainer to me. Like, yeah, I can teach you the skills. I have the skills, so I can teach the skills, but I can't teach people how to have a good attitude if they don't want one. And I wasn't willing to, I think, spend my time or my wheels trying either. So as we are looking at causes of this perfectionism trait, another cause is childhood experiences. Childhood experiences such as being bullied or embarrassed by a teacher or embarrassed by someone at church. And I just feel the need to pause for a moment, because usually when I start going into childhood, I feel like some things may rise up. So if you are feeling that, if you're feeling like things have risen, you're feeling a certain kind of way, uncomfortable, I just want to have you to be responsible, remind you to be responsible for yourself. If you need to stop listening, stop listening. If you need to step away for a moment, step away. If you just want to regulate yourself, regulate your nervous system, just take a few deep breaths, as many as you need to kind of feel yourself coming back down. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth. If you can, to a count of 5, inhaling to your nose, pause for a count of 1, exhale through your mouth, pause for a count of 1, and repeat that as many times as you need so that you can go back into a regulated state. So what's tricky about perfectionism is society promotes and aims to reward people who look perfect, even though everyone know that it's unattainable. And if it's driven by what you're running away from, or if it's driven by unhealthy energy, it's actually more difficult to reach your goals. Like, that is known. And it makes no sense that we still strive for perfectionism, and yet we still strive for perfectionism. And here's the thing that no one will, we will never achieve the thing that we're striving for. Like, that's the thing. We'll never achieve the thing that we're striving for, but we make an unconscious choice to live with the consequences. Like, we're never going to be perfect. We're not. But we make an unconscious choice to live with the consequences of striving to be perfect. And according to Lewis University, those consequences are self-criticism, feelings of low self-worth, depression, anxiety, shame. And I would add physical consequences such as high blood pressure, being overweight, unhealthy sleep patterns. Like, we know that we're not going to ever be perfect, but yet we still strive for perfection. And it just sounds insane, right? Like Einstein said, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And yet, so many people continue to wear their perfectionist behaviors like a badge of honor. Our fully developed thinking brain would say it's insane. But I would argue that our unhealed physiological brain would say it's the best thing for us. Yeah, it's the best thing for us. So I don't know that I would go so far as to call it insane behavior, because what I know and what studies show is the behavior once served you. The behavior once kept you safe. And somewhere in the memory of your nervous system is a message that this behavior is necessary and it helps you to avoid danger. So, insane? No. Brilliant? Yes. And I would just invite you again to pause for a moment and appreciate your body. Appreciate your nervous system for its brilliance, for its wisdom, and for keeping you safe. Now, if you're like me, you're thinking, okay, Catherine, you've given me all this information, but how do I stop being a perfectionist then? Like, if it's not the best thing for me anymore, it's not serving me anymore, it's keeping me from, attaining the goals that I really would like to attain, how do I stop being a perfectionist? And if you've listened to me for a while, or you know me, anything about me, the first thing I'm going to offer is for you to regulate your nervous system. Regulate your nervous system. And you can actually find ways to do this on the nervous system assessment, on my nervous system assessment, which I referred to in the beginning, and it can be found on the front page of my website at www.catherinejames.com. Catherine is CATHRINE, no E in the middle. So go to www.catherinejames.com, take the assessment, and when you receive the answer, it is going to give you various ways that you can begin to regulate your nervous system. Next, I want to offer that you actually get in the habit of loving on yourself. Like when I was stuck in perfectionism, I was always looking for the results, remember? So to look at me or to think about loving on myself was foreign. because all I could focus on was getting the results. So I want to invite you to get in the habit of loving on yourself. And one of the ways that I often would recommend to my clients is every morning when you first wake up and go into the restroom, look at yourself in the mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror, put a smile on your face, say whatever your name is, I love you. So for example, if I were doing this, I'd look at myself in the mirror and I wouldn't see my headscarf. I wouldn't see the sleep in my eyes. Listen, without judgment, to the best of my ability, I would look into my eyes, I would smile, and I would say, Catherine, I love you. Let me tell you, this will change your existence. Do this every single morning, and it will change how you show up in the world. Now, it's going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to tell you that at first, for many, it's going to be uncomfortable. But eventually, it's going to get easier, and it's going to make a world of difference in the level of compassion that you give to yourself. And one thing that I found in helping people to overcome their trauma responses, how do we move away from judgment, is to sit in compassion. So lastly, I want to invite you to learn how to laugh at yourself. Like, don't be so serious. When I started this, laughing at myself, and let me say that I was rigid, I was serious, I was all of that. When I started laughing at myself, though, or giving myself permission to laugh, I would say things like, girl, you really thought you had that? And look at it now. Like I had to make some way of seeing the joke in it, or like, wow, you didn't quite make the mark there, sister. And you get to try it again. So like, as I'm laughing, I'm really looking at other options. So those are 3 ways to begin to overcome this perfectionist trait. You want to first regulate your nervous system. Second, I am suggesting that you learn to love all over yourself. And third, laugh at yourself. Laugh at yourself. And as I conclude, attempting to be perfect was once a good thing. It actually kept you safe. You may or may not know it, but it did. And it may have even elevated you in life as you move from childhood into adulthood, through school. It may have elevated you in life. However, today, it is no longer serving you. It's no longer serving you. If you have any type of health issues, high blood pressure, overweight, anxiety, sleepless nights, if you have any kind of health issues and you have identified yourself as a perfectionist, it is no longer serving you. And what I would offer is that you come to understand that being who you are is enough. As hard as it may be to believe that for some, it really is. Being who you are is enough. Once you step into that space, life feels perfect. Even though it will never be that, it feels perfect. So if you're struggling with perfectionism and you would like to simply be your perfectly created self, I'd invite you to go to www.calendly.com www.katherinejames.com/Coach Catherine and schedule a free 30-minute strategy call. You're going to schedule this call so that you can learn how you can be perfect without trying to do perfect. How you can be perfect. You get to sit in your perfect being, and you don't have to worry about doing things to appear, to look perfect. So schedule a free 30-minute strategy session at www.calendly.com/Coach Catherine. My prayer for you this week is that you will come to know in your heart, in your soul, that you were perfectly created by the only one who is capable of perfection. And as I sign off, I want to remind you that in this life, we get to choose to live a sensational life. Peace and blessings.
Thank you for listening to Where Her Heart Speaks with Coach Catherine, where Catherine aims to challenge and disrupt ineffective thoughts and behaviors to help you not only embody peace, joy, calm, and certainty, but also help you live the life you've always dreamed of living. Follow Catherine on Facebook and Instagram at I Am Catherine James, and visit www.catherinejames.com. Remember, to live the life of your dreams, you must go within and return to the place where your heart speaks.